The slow-moving Hurricane Ida has left hundreds of thousands of New Orleans residents without power due to catastrophic transmission damage. According to Entergy New Orleans, all of New Orleans is currently dark. It could take weeks for power services to be resumed. The ravaging storm took down all 8 transmission lines of the area, according to spokesman Brandon Scardilli in an emailed statement. As a result, that created a massive load imbalance that knocked all power generation in the region offline, Scardilli said. Entergy announced that it's working to assess a path forward to restore power to those who can take it, apparently meaning those who hadn't lost electricity for other reasons during the storm, but those repairs won't likely be completed anytime soon due to the huge power demand and the unprecedented damage faced by power lines. At this point, the only power in the city is coming from generators, Homeland Security said. In a repeat of the scene seen in the 2008 Hurricane Gustav, when 13 of the 14 Entergy's transmission lines into the city failed, leaving hundreds of thousands of homes in the dark, the disaster provoked by Hurricane Ida has left more than 614,000 Entergy customers in Louisiana without power as of Sunday evening at 7 p.m., and by 7:26 p.m., almost 750,000 homes and businesses were without power across the state, reported PowerOutage.us. That's the company that tracks utility outages. Now, the blackouts were mainly concentrated in the southeastern corner of the state, where Ida made its devastating U.S. landfall. Entergy revealed in a statement that it was forced to shut down its 1,152-megawatt Waterford nuclear plant, about 25 miles west of New Orleans, and it will have to keep it offline until local grid damages are assessed later this week. The company warned yesterday on Twitter customers in the hardest-hit areas should plan for the possibility of experiencing extended power outages. Yesterday, Hurricane Ida made landfall twice, first around noon at Port Fourchon and then at 2 p.m. near Galliano, where it turned into a Category 4 hurricane with sustained winds of 150 miles per hour. Even though the storm weakened slightly from that point on, moving ashore with winds of 120 miles per hour, it developed a double eye wall, increasing the threat of severe flooding, as explained by Dr. Levi Cowan, Ph.D. in meteorology and senior scientist at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Development of a double eye wall means that the core wind field of Ida is broader, not a great development to see just before landfall. The storm has also begun to slow down, which was expected, but begins to reveal just how big a flooding threat Ida is, he tweeted. The National Hurricane Center reported that the eye of the storm was about 25 miles southwest of New Orleans and 55 miles southeast of Baton Rouge, started moving northwest last night. So far, the areas hardest hit by power outages were Jefferson and New Orleans parishes, where roughly 372,000 Entergy customers suddenly lost power before 7 p.m. due to the brutal winds that have been wreaking havoc in the area since Sunday morning. As Hurricane Ida moves inland, power outages are increasing, highlighted spokesman Clint Robichaud 1 hour earlier. Once the storm passes and it's safe for crews to assess the damage and make repairs, estimated restoration times will be provided, he said, trying to calm down thousands of distressed residents. Meanwhile, Entergy urged people not to go anywhere near the ravaged areas, as hidden threats could put people's lives at risk. Entergy said, "Do not walk in standing water. Do not venture into areas of debris, since energized and dangerous power lines may not be visible." Even before the raging hurricane hit the U.S. on Sunday, a CoreLogic report estimated that it could damage or destroy close to 1 million homes along the United States Gulf Coast and cause upwards of $220 billion in overall damage across the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. The property and data analytics firm warned that the dangerous storm surge could hit 941,392 properties and completely batter many of them. While residents of the New Orleans metropolitan area have started to evacuate and seek shelter, fleeing for their lives before the city was swamped by the hurricane, the levee gates closed in many areas. Hospital wards in the region were cleared out, and oil refineries and offshore production had to be shut down, according to Bloomberg. In addition to ripping through the city, the storm is expected to have a major impact on oil refineries, chemical plants, and ports. Consequently, as Sitka Pacific advisor Mike Shedlock noted, that will result in serious disruptions for oil production. Ida's projected path has made it a threat to the vast oil refining and petrochemical complex situated along the U.S. Gulf Coast. Shedlock said Ida's projected path has made it a threat to the vast oil refining and petrochemical complex situated along the U.S. Gulf Coast, though the storm's more easterly track Friday suggested it would miss the heart of those operations in Texas and along the Texas-Louisiana border, he wrote on his blog Mishtalk. Shedlock also reported that several refineries in Louisiana and Mississippi have been forced to reduce or entirely halt output due to the storm, which will cause gasoline delivery delays to several cities in the country and possibly result in local shortages. Projections have Ida sweeping through the bulk of U.S. offshore oil production located south and southeast of Louisiana, said Andy Lippo, president of Houston-based consulting firm Lippo Oil Associates. Lippo expects as much as 90% of offshore oil output to close because of the storm. Hurricane Ida is showing up probably in the worst possible location for oil production, he added. Storm surges could still be significant across Louisiana and Mississippi this week. For example, a 10-foot to 15-foot storm surge is forecasted from Morgan City, Louisiana to Ocean Springs, Mississippi. A storm surge of 5 to 8 feet is also looming on Lake Pontchartrain, increasing the risk of flooding in all of those areas and possibly causing more blackouts in other cities. On the other hand, according to the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, Gulf operators have shut 95.7% of oil output, while oil exporters in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico have shut the production of 1.74 million barrels a day of crude and 93.8% of natural gas output. At least 288 platforms have been evacuated before the hurricane approached the shore. Given that the storm came with 120 miles per hour winds, it has caused unprecedented disruptions in refining and petrochemical operations, Platts Analytics said. Hurricane Ida was expected to come ashore along the same path as other storms, which did extensive damage to USGC refining and petrochemical facilities. Many plants have been hardened against hurricanes, but further disruptions in operations are still very likely due to flooding, power outages, and personnel dislocations, added the firm. After it rapidly strengthened and recorded sustained winds of almost 160 miles per hour in some areas, becoming a Category 5 hurricane, Ida became one of the most ravaging disasters the state of Louisiana has witnessed in its entire history. Exactly 16 years ago, on the very same day, Hurricane Katrina struck the area and provoked unprecedented damage, destroying thousands of homes and causing a humanitarian catastrophe that sparked commotion all over the world. with winds strong enough to rip roofs from houses, snapping trees and power poles, and blackouts that could be extended for up to 4 weeks. Hurricane Ida caused an estimated loss of more than $40 billion in a single day, and more losses based on its projected path are going to be assessed this week, according to Chuck Watson, a disaster modeler at Enki Research. If the CoreLogic $220 billion estimate is proven right, that would put Ida among the top 10 costliest U.S. storms, head-to-head with Katrina's $176 billion. I feel sick to my stomach watching, National Hurricane Center forecaster Eric Blake tweeted yesterday. This is a very sobering morning, he stressed. Indeed, for residents of that area, the devastation caused once again in their lives is truly heartbreaking. When it made landfall, Ida registered stronger winds than Hurricane Katrina. Only 2 other storms in history have hit Louisiana with winds this powerful: Lost Island Hurricane in 1856 and Hurricane Laura in 2020. On top of that, Ida is projected to drive ocean levels as high as 16 feet, with rainfall in excess of 2 feet expected to occur this week, which could trigger even more accidents and disasters. For the time being, Colonial Pipeline, which remember was hacked and shut down earlier this year, resulting in catastrophic gas shortages that lasted for weeks across many states of the country, announced the closure of its Lines 1 and 2 systems from Houston to Greensboro, North Carolina. Colonial, known as the primary fuel artery from Houston to the south and east coast, mentioned that the rest of the network from North Carolina to New Jersey would operate normally. The closure was a precautionary measure, but that could become a major issue this week if the region's gas inventories start to dwindle and deliveries remain suspended. With roughly 750,000 residents now bracing for widespread power outages that could last for almost a month, consumer demand for electricity is projected to shift to gas, which could push gas prices up, just as seen during the Texas storms in February, when millions of Texans were left without power amid one of the coldest winters on record. Back then, people turned to gas so that they could turn on their heating devices, and prices skyrocketed by nearly 46%. The chaos triggered by Hurricane Ida highlights how our aging power infrastructure is extremely vulnerable to disruptions, and how utterly incompetent our leaders are when it comes to disaster prevention. Even though a natural catastrophe cannot be stopped or fully contained, it's possible to prepare in advance to lessen the damage and avoid putting people's lives at risk. Their wait-and-see strategy is leading to unimaginable losses that could have been averted. This goes from the Texas storms to California wildfires and the recent storms brought on by Hurricane Ida. Right now, conditions are only getting more dangerous for the thousands of people who decided to shelter in place or couldn't escape fast enough. Our country has been facing one painful disaster after the other, and as the climate crisis has started to dramatically worsen, unfortunately this seems to be just the beginning.